You read the title correctly. In today's tutorial, I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide on how I personally will use artificial intelligence to find the next 50x altcoin in this bull run. Because one thing we need to be absolutely clear about, the topic of artificial intelligence is more important now than ever and is currently making exponential leaps. We saw it a few days ago. Grok 4 made huge waves on social media. It's really incredible what is now possible with Grok 4. And now it's becoming even more important. Exactly 10 days ago, we got the official announcement from OpenAI that there is now a ChatGPT agent mode. We now have the possibility for a digital agent to take over entire tasks for us, and we can delegate tasks to this agent. As I said, it's completely new. Exactly 10 days ago it was introduced, and just 5 days ago it even became possible for German-speaking users to try out this agent mode. We can go into ChatGPT, click on the plus symbol, and here we see the brand new agent mode. Personally, I've already tried out an incredible amount with this agent mode. Over the past few days, I've really run several simulations with many altcoin projects, and here you can see how the whole thing works. As I said, over the course of the video, I will give you a complete step-by-step guide so that later on everyone will have the opportunity to conduct their own analyses here, because that is, I would say, one of the main problems even in the crypto space nowadays. We have so many bad influences because there are so many influencers out there, especially on Twitter, who promote all kinds of junk coins that have no substance behind them. And as a beginner, you're naturally pretty lost in that situation. You really don't know, can I trust this person? Can I not trust them? And with this video, I want to give you a toolbox so that you can carry out your own complete analyses accordingly. Later on, you'll be completely independent from any influencers because you'll be able to verify everything yourself, and that, I'd say, is the whole point of today's video. Of course, you can also check all the altcoins I present on my YouTube channel using this method. By the way, I've already done this with all the altcoins in my own portfolio. I've checked everything using this agent. I've already run 30 or 40 different altcoins through this agent, and as you can see here, the overall result is incredibly impressive. We can see here that an unbelievable number of sources are being combed through. Here, 38 sources. Yes, in the case of Sui, in this case I also tested Bitten. All in all, our agent worked for 12 minutes. As I said, I'll show you step by step in a moment how you can do all of this yourself. But for now, I want to give you a preview of what you'll end up with later, or rather, what the final result will look like. With this agent, we basically have the ability to search the entire internet at once. Yes, this agent will later set up its own desktop and basically take over all the work for us. Of course, you also need the right prompt, but as I said, I'll show you later how it all works. I'll also provide you with all the materials you need. What we have at this point, we have a complete altcoin analysis with all the parameters I specified beforehand. We have a complete scoring system that I personally set up based on my own experience, because obviously I have quite a lot of experience in the altcoin sector, and accordingly I developed a comprehensive system, a kind of ranking or scoring system that the agent will later use to operate here. Here we can see the tokenomics, and it's truly impressive how precise the results are, including where all the data and sources are drawn from. Later on, you can even verify everything yourself to see exactly which sources the agent used for each piece of information. In the case of Bitten, it took 12 minutes, used 39 sources, and here we have a complete overall result with a total score of 86 out of 100. And here, everything is presented in detail again, from the unlocks to the vestings, even the top holders. So it's also incredibly impressive that, in some cases, on-chain data is read directly. So for example, it checks who are the top holders. What is the overall token distribution like? So we have so much information compiled and presented here. So here we can see everything again, how it's all displayed. Plus, at the end of the day, we get an overall conclusion with strengths and weaknesses summarized, and even a recommendation from ChatGPT at the end. And in the case of Bitten, the recommendation is hold or long-term accumulation. So it's very, very precise, I have to say. We also see the reasoning and the overall assessment here, but more on that later. You can definitely imagine how powerful such a tool is, what a gigantic leverage this whole thing provides. And personally, I also believe that those who are able to use these AI tools in this bull run will be the ones who massively dominate this bull run, or at least have an absolutely unfair advantage compared to those investors who do not use such AI tools. And that's why, in my opinion, it's incredibly important to provide you with this tutorial showing you, on the one hand, how to use ChatGPT with the new agent mode, and on the other hand, and this is the funny part, Grok 4 has just been released, offering a similar function, a similar capability. The huge advantage here, of course, is that Grok, Elon Musk's artificial intelligence, has full access to all of Twitter. This means we have the ability to search all of Twitter for new narratives, new trends, and new altcoins that are coming out. For example, we can see here how many mentions a certain altcoin has. We also get a score here. We receive a momentum indicator showing how popular a particular altcoin is at the moment. And the funny thing is, or rather what's really impressive, is that we can just click on tasks here. As I mentioned, I've already assigned a task here. I'll quickly show you that as well. And here we have the option for this very agent to prepare daily tasks for us. So we can even automate the whole thing so that every single day we get a summary of new trends, new narratives, top crypto news, or whatever else. This means we've created our own agent here who provides us with an incredible amount of support, especially when it comes to resources and general news. And as I said, this whole thing is transferable to anything that is, let's say, related to Twitter, and especially for crypto, it's an incredible advantage, an unfair advantage really, that you can gain compared to other investors. Yes, unfortunately, going into detail about how to actually use Grok would go beyond the scope of today's video. Yes, because at this point you can also use this ChatGPT agent independently. In fact, in my case, I've even created a combination model. So, I use Elon Musk's artificial intelligence, Grok in this case, to search all of Twitter, essentially conducting a comprehensive analysis. What new trends are emerging? What new altcoins are coming out? I have to say at this point, it's not yet 100% completely precise, and since I know that many beginners are watching this video, it would just go beyond the scope. That's why this is sufficient as it is. For example, you might see an altcoin in a new YouTube video of mine, and maybe I'm personally really convinced and tell you, hey, this is the best altcoin or something like that. Now, with this toolkit that I'm giving you, you have the opportunity to double check everything and then carry out your own analysis afterwards. That is, I would say, the best option. If I were to explain Grok now as well, it would go beyond the scope of this video. I might release a new video about that in the coming days. So go ahead and leave a like and most importantly subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. This will become especially relevant later on when I present all the results to you from, let's say, complete simulations that I will be conducting. So I might later analyze 50, 100 or even 200 altcoins together with the new agent mode of ChatGPT, and then I can gladly present you with the overall results and findings. In today's video, the main focus is to give you a tutorial. How does all of this work? Yes, how can you use all of this for yourself personally? Now we're moving on to the practical part, and of course I've already prepared everything for you so that you basically don't have to do any work at all. Specifically, I've put together 2 PDFs for you, one containing the complete prompt. Yes, as I mentioned, based on my experience, I've created a system for conducting comprehensive evaluations of certain altcoin projects. I've basically bundled everything together in this prompt as a kind of complete system. I've summarized all of this in a PDF here. Plus, at this point, I have a second PDF as well because I want to have a specific output, and to ensure that the output from ChatGPT is also predetermined, I've basically created a system here where each altcoin will later be entered into a sheet. So for me personally, that's also very important when I want to conduct comprehensive analyses. At the end of the day, I basically have an overall overview with strengths and weaknesses along with a recommendation and an overall conclusion. It's definitely very convenient and saves an incredible amount of time. On the one hand, you have to keep in mind it's incredibly important for beginners, and I would say it's an unbelievably powerful tool for beginners, especially if you have no experience at all. On the other hand, and I can speak from personal experience here, even if you are already in quotation marks a pro and you're already very good at self-analysis. So even if we assume that this agent doesn't really add much value for you, it's still incredibly time-saving. I can tell you that, especially when I want to analyze new altcoins. For example, there were certain altcoins that I only analyzed here for the first time. As I said, I've spent a lot of time on this over the past few days. For instance, we discussed an altcoin in my Telegram group. A user had asked about it. To be honest, I personally wasn't up to date or fully informed about this particular altcoin. Boom, I just entered the altcoin once and got a completely detailed analysis here, which saved me an incredible amount of work because, as I said, several sources are compiled here. Depending on the altcoin and what's available, a different number of sources are processed in each case. We can also see here that a total of 9 minutes was spent working with 55 sources compiled for a somewhat newer, smaller coin. Someone also submitted this one. As I said, these are not recommendations or anything like that, but I checked them all at this point, and then you basically get an overall score here. What we're going to do now, I'll show you how to enter all of this here. And in case you're wondering where to find all the PDFs, I've sent everything completely free of charge to my public and free Telegram group. At this point, that's the best way for you to get access to the PDFs. As I said, I've linked everything in the video description, and what you can do at this point is simply click on the PDF here, copy everything from A to Z, and then enter it all into ChatGPT. I don't have to do it here now because I've already done it, so I can just copy everything from my previous prompts. So you basically need to copy in PDF number 1 and then also PDF number 2 so that the agent knows exactly what the output should look like. So the second PDF is there to make sure the agent knows what the output should look like. So what we're going to do now, once you've entered the entire prompt, is that there are only 3 parameters in total that you, or in this case, the user needs to change. And in this case, those are the name, the coin ticker, and the contract address. Now I'll show you in practice what the whole thing looks like. We can now pick out an altcoin for ourselves here. For example, I'll give you an example here using Ondo. Then we just click on the contract address here and then go back over to ChatGPT. It's incredibly simple. As I said, you just need to go to CoinMarketCap and copy the contract address. We'll enter it here now, input all the data, and the ticker is Ondo. In this case, the name is also Ondo. And then we can run the analysis here. Now in this case, we click on Submit. Once everything has been submitted, we now have the option to watch the agent live and see what happens here. We can see here that the entire agent is thinking. What we can do at this point is watch the agent live, and it's really, really exciting. We can see here that the online search is running, and what the agent is doing now, it has set up its own desktop. This is basically just like if we were searching ourselves, we're now searching various websites, doing the analysis, and now multiple sources are being combed through by this agent. All of this work is now being done automatically by the agent. Multiple sources are being analyzed, and based on the parameters we provided through the prompt, the analysis is now being carried out. We can also watch live here what the agent is doing in this case. Now I'm going to open the white paper from the documents, blah, 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 blah. And we can see all of this here now. He's now basically going directly into the white paper live, analyzing everything, checking everything, and doing it all completely independently. We don't have to do anything at this point. We can now watch the agent live here. In this case, he will collect all the tokenomics data. So here we can see the individual, sub-processes that the agent is handling for us in this case. On average, the whole process takes between 3 and 20 minutes, depending on the complexity of the task and also on how many times you've done it before. I have the feeling that it took a bit longer for me at the beginning, but over time the agent got faster and faster. Now we can see how the whole thing works. And now, while the agent is working for us, I'd like to quickly use this time to go over the analyses I've already conducted in this case. As I said, I've already tried out quite a lot at this point. I've also used some really bad coins by far. I mean, really small coins. And of course, that's especially interesting. I tried out meme coins. With meme coins, it was also very, very precise. Yes, the tokenomics were assessed correctly. The social narrative was also evaluated accurately. Technology and product received a poor score, which of course makes sense for a meme coin project, and team and partnerships were also rated poorly. So everything is definitely working very smoothly when it comes to the analyses. I'm honestly really impressed. Of course, you also have the option to further expand this prompt. You can make it even more detailed, you can make it even more comprehensive, and maybe provide even more reference points. So, obviously there are no limits here. I might give you some updates on this here on YouTube in the coming days, so it's definitely worth subscribing or joining the Telegram group. We can also exchange ideas with each other there. One thing that should be mentioned is that this agent mode is currently unfortunately only available for Plus users, so to speak. So you basically need this subscription with ChatGPT, which costs 20 euros a month. That is, I would say, the only requirement. In my opinion, it's a clear recommendation, even though I don't have any affiliate link or anything like that here. So I have no connection to ChatGPT whatsoever. Of course, if you don't feel like spending these 20 euros, you can also just join the Telegram group for free. You can also send in the altcoin project you'd like to have analyzed, and I can take care of the whole thing for you. So I'm even happy to offer you that here, that I basically conduct the analyses for you. Yeah, because at the end of the day, I already have a lot of reference values here and basically have this agent running all day long. You can also see here on the right side how many altcoins I've already checked. So we can also take a look at other altcoins here if you want. In this case, it was a smaller one. It's really crazy what you can do here. I'm really deeply impressed. Especially in combination with Grok, it's even more powerful when you can even check out new narratives and new altcoins here. But as I said, that would be too complex for this video. Now let's go back to our agent, to Ondo. Here we can definitely see everything that's being checked and how many sources are being analyzed. So we'll see each other again in just a moment, maybe in 5 to 10 minutes when the agent is finished. Alright, we can see that the work is coming to an end. We can see that it has now worked for a total of 8 minutes. Now in this case, the report is already being generated, the output for us. And now we can see all the information prepared here. We can check everything again. A total of 8 minutes was spent working with 48 sources in total, which is quite a lot. So 48 sources means, at the end of the day, 48 websites that were accessed. And you should keep that in mind, or rather, take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, before you invest in an altcoin, how much time do you actually spend on research? How many websites do you look at? So feel free to check yourself against that. I would argue that most people are below this number that this agent is giving us here, so 48 sources is quite a lot. I can imagine that for this kind of work, if you're a complete newcomer to the crypto market and you have to search through everything and really dig through all the sources, I can easily imagine it would take several hours, especially as a beginner. I know myself how time-consuming research can sometimes be, especially when you have to check the entire white paper and all the documents, and you basically have to gather all the information together. That can really be a lot of work. And that's why an incredible amount of work is being taken off your hands here. Now we can check everything here. For example, we can see the individual parameters. Everything is definitely correct here. I also have a lot of information about Ondo memorized. That's why I used it as an example in this case, because I can immediately verify everything based on my own research and experience. Market cap fully diluted. So here we can see that the market cap 3 billion is based on the current circulating supply and the rest is still fully diluted. So in total, fully diluted, it's 10 billion because certain tokens are not yet in circulation. This was also calculated correctly. The 24-hour volume is also correct. Yes, the official links have been checked in this case, and now we're really getting into the nitty-gritty, into the details. The tokenomics are being considered 14 out of 20. In my opinion, everything here was also interpreted correctly. Of course, we have the advantage that the core team is completely locked for 5 years. I would say that's definitely a positive, but the clear downside is that in this case the fully diluted amount is 10 billion. This means that there will be quite a bit of inflation added, and this is also clearly and correctly identified here, which could mean inflationary pressure in the medium term. A positive aspect is the long lockup structure and the absence of continuous emissions. So in my opinion, this was also interpreted correctly overall. Anyone who knows Ondo even a little knows for sure that all the tokenomics, the distributions, always take place in January in a single block. In this case, I would also give about 14 out of 20 at this point. So in my opinion, that's pretty accurate, pretty precise. You could even be a bit stricter and only give 12 out of 20 because it is actually a minor disadvantage since there will still be quite a bit of inflation. But still, in my view, it's by no means a knockout criterion or an extreme red flag. That's why it's definitely rated correctly. The social narrative is also very good. Yes, so that fits as well. As I said, feel free to take a screenshot. I don't want to read everything out word for word here. I've already done analyses like this myself. So everything this agent has worked out here is definitely correct. Overall score 84 out of 100. And here you can see once again the overall execution, the overall reasoning for why everything was categorized this way. In my opinion, I also like it very much. Here, the entire team was listed correctly with the CEO and the individual positions within the team. I also like that a lot. You can immediately verify everything again, and here at this point we also see the strengths and, in this case, the weaknesses listed below. The weaknesses are also immediately interpreted and identified correctly. High fully diluted valuation in relation to the market cap is, in my opinion, Ondo's biggest weakness, and it was interpreted correctly. Limited open source transparency is also correct. Regulatory risk, okay, that can definitely be included as a weakness as well, and in this case we also get a clear recommendation, hold watch. Yes, in my opinion that was also interpreted correctly. So in my opinion, it's truly incredible how much work is being taken on. And the big advantage is, right? As a beginner, you have the advantage that you can cross-check some altcoins. And as a more advanced investor, in my case, for example, you might ask yourself, hey Vincent, I mean, you could theoretically do the research yourself because I would theoretically have the expertise to do so. But for me personally, it's a huge leverage because it saves an enormous amount of time. That's what I would say is the big advantage for me. And I can verify everything immediately. Yes, so every single thing, every single source I can verify in this case. I can look at which sources have been used here. And that's also, I would say, very good to double check the agent, of course. Now, just very briefly as a reference point, especially for those viewers who are regularly active on my YouTube channel, you definitely have a rough idea of which projects I'm invested in. Yes, some of you definitely also know that I'm invested in Clearpool. So just as a quick reference, Clearpool is also an RWA project, so you could say it's the little brother of Ondo. As I said, I'm not being paid, I'm not in cooperation with any of these altcoin projects or anything like that, but I just want to provide a reference point here. It's basically like a little brother to Ondo. 118 million market cap, so it's significantly smaller. Yes, and I also sent the agent out here, and now you have a small reference point for how ChatGPT, this agent so to speak, evaluates a smaller project. Here you can see the summary. Feel free to take a screenshot at this point. In my opinion, it was also presented clearly here. And that, for example, is also a big advantage, where I would say many beginners have trouble reading on-chain data. For example, we see that the top holder analysis shows 2 wallets, each holding 15%. So you really have to consider how deep this analysis goes. I would venture to say that 90% of the general public, 90% of retail investors, you can include yourselves here. How much research do you actually do before making an investment decision? So I think this can definitely be a big help for many people because it also saves a lot of time. Otherwise, as mentioned, you can see the reference value here. In this case, Clearpool, the little brother, received a score of 74 out of 100. In this case, ChatGPT categorized it as follows: a solid mid-cap project with strong governance and real utility. Yes, then everything is summarized here once again, and in this case, the recommendation and conclusion are also given here, hold and watch. That's why I'm definitely satisfied here. As I said, I'm personally invested here myself, but this should at least give you a reference point for how, let's say, the agent categorizes all these projects. Incredibly exciting. At this point, I also want to make a clear cut. I think you've now gotten a very concrete and clear insight into how I approach things here. Be sure to subscribe. I might dive deeper into how to use Krog4 in the coming days. Especially with all these tasks, it's really exciting to send the agent out, so to speak, and have it summarize everything on Twitter. For example, summarizing the top crypto news or the top macroeconomic news on Twitter. So this is also incredibly helpful, incredibly time-saving. It's amazing what possibilities we currently have here. That really needs to be clearly mentioned at this point, and I definitely want to always be one of the first on my YouTube channel so that you can gain a clear and above all unfair advantage compared to other investors. That's basically the goal, I'd say. If you enjoy this kind of content, I'd appreciate a subscription and a like. Feel free to share your opinion in the comments as well. What do you think of this agent? What do you think of the overall process and the way I approached it? You're also welcome to suggest improvements. That's how we did it back then with all the ChatGPT trading bots too. There were definitely some clever folks out there, some of you nerdy viewers who gave me suggestions for improvement back then. So I'm always very open to that, and I'm always grateful when you leave feedback in the comments or in the Telegram group as well. As I said, everything is linked again in the video description so you know where to find it. Otherwise, I'd like to sincerely thank you for your attention, and I'll see you again in the next videos.